All right, so this channel of mine here is going to be, guess you would say, all about football, basketball, and baseball. A little bit of hockey mixed in here. And we're going to be discussing all sorts of sports topics, the ones that I find interesting, maybe the ones that you find interesting. I mean, there's quite a long list. I mean, so many debates. The funny thing is, there's a lot. We're going to be debating a lot of things with no answer. It's kind of like all sorts of debates where talk about who won. It's like, well, I don't know. There's no way to keep score, and that's basically it. Um, First and foremost, we're going to be talking about my favorite player of all time, and that's Joe Montana. Now, I'm going to try to not make this a Montana Brady juxtaposition. We will get to that one day. Um, Basically, what I'm going to be laying out here is how truly great Joe Montana was. And I think kind of the one cool thing about Tom Brady and his ascension to what pretty much everyone thinks is greatest of all time was it brought Joe back into a lot of conversations that and that makes me happy because sports wise, there's not much more I like talking about, and it kind of showed that like wow he was kind of the consensus number one to everyone, um, and I think that makes perfect sense to me. He's still the greatest of all time. If if you lined up, if you put Joe on any team, I would I would pick his team to win. To me, the greatest. I'm talking about who's your opinion of who's the greatest of all time. What it really comes down to is in any sport or anything. What it really comes down to is if everything you loved was on the line, right? And you had to win a game and you had the number one pick, who would you choose? To me, that would be Joe. Because I feel like he would win it in the end. And because he pretty much always did. Now, Joe, even starting at Notre Dame, I mean, he took a 1-1. They were 1-1 when he came in, reeled off 10 straight victories, and then they won the national championship. And I believe him and Joe Namath are still the only two quarterbacks to win the national championship and a Super Bowl. um, and they beat the number one team, Texas, 38-10. Now, Joe's playoff losses weren't a lot. In three times in the playoffs, he got injured and didn't finish the game, right? So, not really a whole heck of a lot you can do there. Now, there was only one time where he left with the lead. That was 1990. He didn't really play a great game against a great Giants defense that went on to win a second Super Bowl that year. And they were down, 13-12 when he got injured. The other, the other, he lost 6 playoff games, I believe. First one he lost to Washington. They were down 21-0 going in the fourth. Ties it up, throws 3 touchdown passes. They end up losing at the end. In '85, probably his worst game that he played that I know of. It's definitely his worst playoff game. I mean, they got beat 17-3 to the Giants. That was just a bad game for him. 86, 86, they were down 21-3 when he got injured and left. Man, it's a comeback kid. You could have pulled him back. 87. 87, I don't understand how. Because Bill Walsh takes Joe out when they're down, right? And Joe's the comeback kid. And Steve Young, he played good, and I guess he made a game of it or anything, but that didn't really turn out to be a genius move. I mean, they still ended up losing, and Joe might have won it for you. He'd done that so many times before. And 1990, we already mentioned that. 93 with the Chiefs. Man, they were down. I think they were down 20-6, and man, his receivers couldn't catch anything that game. And he throws a pass to one of his teammates, hits him right in the chest, bounces out in the end zone, hits him right in the end zone. Would have scored a touchdown. It was like, I think he was in the end zone. Bounces out, Bills intercept it. Joe gets knocked out of the game 3 plays later. That was the end of the first half. Third play of the second half, he gets injured, doesn't finish the game. Oh, that was. He could have won one for Marty, and they would have put up a much better Super Bowl than the Bills did that year, I think. But I'm getting a little ahead of myself. Joe has probably the best Super Bowl ever played. I mean, when you look at the teams that they beat to win those Super Bowls, I'm making a case for why I think Joe is the greatest of all time. I just went over all of his playoff losses. Now we're going to talk about the wins. I mean, let's see, 81, they beat the Giants. Third ranked defense in the league. That was Lawrence Taylor's rookie year. And they beat him pretty good. I think they beat him like 38-24. So to put 38 points, I have to check that again. To put up 38 points on that defense, that was before he had Jerry Rice. Let's not forget, Joe won 2 Super Bowls without Jerry Rice. It's a lot of people always say Joe had Jerry Rice. Yeah, he had Jerry Rice for the second 2. Of course, you're going to use him. What's he going to do? Just ignore him the whole time? And they didn't really play together that long. When they did, they were unbelievable. So in 81, beat the third-ranked defense, the Giants, legendary players, maybe the best defense player of all time. And he was a rookie that year, but I think he won Defense Player of the Year that year too. They faced the Cowboys, 7th ranked in the league, and of course, that was the catch game where Joe threw 3 interceptions in that game. They had 6 turnovers, and Joe won it at the end. Now they also, God, I forget who. Somebody made a game-saving tackle at the end there though, on Drew Pearson. So it takes a little bit of luck. But hey, Notre Dame, luck of the Irish. Let's see, 88, he played really good against the Bengals in the Super Bowl. no interceptions. No interceptions in the Super Bowl. It's a common theme for Joe. And and then 84. 84, they faced Giants again, the Bears, who had all their guys, and they had Buddy Ryan still. All the guys that would be on those core 80s teams played them, beat them. They beat them 23-0. Now, they didn't have Jim McMahon in that game. Still played great against the defense. Giants had the 8th ranked defense. Bears had the 3rd ranked defense. I think they beat the Giants 21-10. And then Miami had the 7th ranked defense in the league. I'm talking points because that's what matters, right? More than anything. Puts up a phenomenal Super Bowl. Threw for over 300 yards, might have been 330 or 350. 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, ran for a touchdown. He ran for 59 yards during that game, I think. Joe could really move. He's a heck of a basketball player. I think he's the only player. He got recruited to play at NC State the year after they won the national championship in basketball. And he got recruited by Notre Dame the year after they won the national championship in football. I mean, talk about being like the guy in high school. It doesn't get much better than that. You're recruited by the national championship in football and basketball. Like, I don't know. He's Joe Cool, man. It doesn't get much cooler than that. And then, I mean, to win the national championship in college and then do what he did in the pros, he's the coolest guy of all time. Let's see. 1988. They put up 34 points on the Vikings. Vikings had the 2nd ranked defense in the league. Chicago had the 1st ranked defense in the league. They won that game 28-3. And he played magnificently in that game. And just the coolest. I think probably my favorite NFL Films moment of all time when he's standing when they're playing the national anthem and he's just blowing the steam out of his mouth and he just looks so cool. And I mean, the finesse ass 49ers went in there and dominated start to finish. And then 1989, which is unquestionably one of the best teams ever. I would say probably the best team ever. You look at, you have Joe Montana at quarterback and Jerry Rice at wide receiver. You start there, and then their great defense and everything like that. And they put up 41 against the Vikings with 6th ranked defense. Rams had kind of average defense. They beat them 30-3. And then the number 1 ranked defense in the league, Denver, they put up 55 points. And Joe threw 5 touchdowns, and he came out with 5 minutes to go in the 3rd quarter. That's probably the greatest game ever played when you put like that it was in the Super Bowl against the number 1 ranked defense in the league that year. So, I mean, that's why Joe's the greatest to me. And that we're going to get into, and with the Chiefs, they had the team just got knocked out. He was going, I think it was Kimball Anders, really good, especially receiving fullback in the 90s. If he makes that catch, they're probably down 20-13, and Kansas City gets the ball back in the second half. You never know. That's sports for you. And then 94, they lost to Miami. That was his last game. And unfortunately, the 49ers won it that year without him. I was just like, oh man. I would have been pulling. If I knew what was going on back then, I would have been pulling hard against the 49ers, especially if I was Joe. Um, let's get into. I mean, he won Super Bowls with two different head coaches. Won many years apart. I mean, their 81 team was a lot different than 88, 89. 88, he had to come in and rescue them. I mean, Bill Walsh was kind of screwing with them, playing Steve Young all the time. And they were 6-5 at one point, and then they're basically like, we got to go with Joe. And Joe did what he did, and they reeled off. So they went 4-1, and then they go into Chicago. They beat Minnesota, get revenge for the last year. Go into Chicago and beat them pretty good. And then where Joe just played so great. And then they go Cincinnati and they're down. Joe didn't have a great game. I think they were down. I think they were up 6-0 at halftime. Finally threw a touchdown pass, I think, his first touchdown pass that day. He threw late in the fourth quarter. And then, man, with all that happened during that season and him screwing around with Steve Young, and I'm sure he's like, I don't know if, I mean, imagine if he throws an interception in that drive to win the Super Bowl. If he throws an interception, he might not be back in San Francisco the next year. They might have went with Steve Young. Who knows? Bill Walsh is retiring. Like, we'll never know. And I'm glad we'll never know because Joe pulled through. And he was just masterful in that drive, obviously. 92 yards to go win it. Is that John Candy up there? Like, I mean, that's cool. And and then 89, nobody stood a chance in 89 against them. I think they lost. It's pretty crazy that in 84 they lost one game by 3 points the entire year. And then in 89 they lost 2 games by, I think, combined 5 points. So those are two of your best teams ever. It's pretty crazy that in 84 they had such an amazing team that you can make an argument for them being the best team of all time. And then they added Jerry Rice the very next year. So I mean, and I don't want to get not with this video. We're not going to go to the Tom Brady comparisons. He had an 18-1 season where they lost one game by 3 points. And that was it was the most important game of the year. Joe had one of those seasons too. They won the Super Bowl. Joe only played. Joe didn't play nearly. He was in the NFL for 16 years. He didn't play at all his first season. He didn't play 2 years in San Francisco. His last 2 years. 91, he was out the whole year with injury. I think 92, they just went with Steve Young. I think he was healthy that year. They just didn't play him. In 1980, he didn't become the starter until halfway through the year. In 1982, they lost half the season to strike. 87, he had a great year, but they missed a quarter of the season due to a strike because they used replacement players for some of those games. And Joe actually, I think, crossed the picket line and threw like 5 touchdowns. So I think, and like none of, ordinarily, everybody else would hate if their teammate did that. I don't think anybody really cared that Joe did. I think they were a little mad at first, but they got over it pretty quickly. He's just that cool. Uh, and then, so 86, he misses half the year with a back injury. So he only really had like 10 full years, won 4 Super Bowls, got to the conference championship 3 other times, and he got injured and was out of the game for 2 of those. And then in 3 other years he gets injured and doesn't finish the game. Doesn't finish their playoff game. They go on to lose every single time without him. Now they were down in 2 of those games, but they weren't down. I mean, 21-3 against the Giants, that would have been tough. But he's Joe. That's what he's known for. And the Chiefs, I mean, even if they were down 20-6 when he got injured, I mean, 2 touchdowns, that's not insurmountable, especially for him for one half. A lot I hear all the time, because I've been talking about Joe my whole life, and a lot of people say that, okay, he played in an era where there was no free agency, so he got to play with the same team every year. And that's fair. I mean, they didn't have to worry about losing guys. Nobody else did either. I mean, he went against the same Bears and Giants defenses. He played them for 10 years, and and I'm sure he has the wounds to prove it, because they hit him hard. I mean, they hit all quarterbacks hard, especially back then. And I think the era that he played in, which gets me to my next point, the era that he played in, and he had great stats. That era, though, it was, I think, a lot of the reason why the game has sped up. I mean, everybody knows this because the rules are totally different. Because if you're a quarterback, now I never played quarterback at any kind of a high level. I think it's kind of common sense. I don't know about common sense, but if it's not necessarily just the punishment of taking all the hits and everything. It's the fact that if you're a defender nowadays, you're not really, I don't think they're really going full speed, because they know that if the quarterback lets go of the ball, there's a good chance they're going to get a penalty. So they kind of hold back. Whereas back then, they were just relentlessly going at guys. And I think just that little detail really makes a lot of difference, especially if you're a quarterback and you're stepping into a throw knowing that once you let it go, they're not going to touch you. As opposed to, I could let it go and they're going to give them a little bit of leeway. I think that makes a lot of difference. Now, Tom Brady did play early in his career, because his career was so long. The first, 10 years, I mean, it was still a lot different than back in the day, but then that's why nowadays you see guys with even like pretty good quarterbacks put up stats that in the 80s would have been like some of the best in the league. And I mean, look at John Elway's stats. Were not, if anybody goes back, if anybody born in the year like, God, like 2005, 2000, 2005, maybe 2010, if you go back and look at John Elway stats, you'd be like, he was like the worst. He was average at best. His stats were not. I think they got they got to the Super Bowl one year. He threw like 13 touchdowns and 12 interceptions. I don't know if they got to the Super Bowl that year. I forget what year that was. I think in 1989 he threw 18 touchdowns and 18 interceptions, and he was one of the best quarterbacks in the league and a phenomenal quarterback. I mean, there's no question about that. And if you talk to anybody that watched him play, now I saw him at the end of his career, his last like 4 or 5 years. If you talk to anybody who watched him, and he was still great. If you talk to anybody who watched him, they're like, yeah, he's amongst the best ever. I mean, Dan Marino, the year he threw 48 touchdowns, he threw 17 interceptions, which isn't like a ton, but that was just, they all threw a lot of interceptions back then, especially, and we'll get into this in another video. I mean, Joe came in at the perfect time, at a great time for him, really, because in 1978 they made all sorts of rules about not being able to hit receivers. Joe got in 1979, so I wouldn't compare Joe to guys who played before him. You know, I kind of just did because I said I anointed him the greatest ever. I think a lot of that gets really lost in the shuffle of how great and how difficult it would have been to play. I mean, it's always difficult to play quarterback. There's no question about that. But how difficult it would have been to play in when they could just tee off on quarterbacks, they could tee off on receivers. I think 1978 was the first year where if you were a defensive back, you could tackle the guy all the way up until the quarterback let go of the ball. How much of a difference does that make? So Joe, that's why I wouldn't compare Joe to like Roger Staubach, Fran Tarkenton, Otto Graham, uh, like guys like that. Joe Namath. Everybody always gets on Joe Namath and his stats because they weren't very good. But if you realize that guys could, that's a pretty big difference. If Namath played nowadays, his career certainly would have been a lot more Hall of Fame worthy, in my opinion. It's all speculation, but if there's some, I'm getting way off topic here, but if there's some alternate universe where you could see guys from, you could take guys from the previous era and put them in today's game or even the game of the last like 10, 15 years. I would love to see Joe Namath, Dan Marino, Fran Tarkenton, Roger Staubach. Those guys, I couldn't imagine what those guys would be doing this day and age. Back on to Montana, because that's the topic of this video. I mean, 11 touchdowns, no interceptions. And the thing that I noticed though about the best quarterbacks is that they always have great defenses. how much does that go hand in hand with, does the quarterback make the defense? Does the defense make the quarterback? Who knows? I'd love to hear some opinions on that because I never really thought of until I watched somebody's video about um, talking about how like special teams, and they're like, well, special teams, you get the ball in better field defense and special teams. You usually start out with better field position. It's very interesting. I never really thought of that. But that's another area of discussion that maybe we'll get into someday. But for now, I hope I hope everyone can, maybe I gave you one or two things that you never thought about with Joe, because I think he's the best ever, and he never really gets a lot of credit for being. Yes, he wasn't necessarily a dual threat because he wasn't like a burner in terms of speed or anything like that. Um, but he could really move. I mean, he he was quite mobile back there and really quick footed. I mean, if you the one play he made in the catch game where he turns, pivots, and I think it was too tall Jones who was right there. I'm pretty sure it was him. And this was not the catch play. This was much earlier. And he just hits. He just plants, gets out of his way, throws it perfectly. Dwight Clark. I mean, Dwight Clark was a really good player. He wasn't just, he's known for that catch, but he actually had 1,000 yards that year. Jerry Rice. They love to always mention, kind of bring Joe down because they're like, well, he had Jerry Rice. He did have Jerry Rice, but he didn't have him for very long. They only played 85. They played together. Um, that was Jerry Rice's rookie year, and he was not the same Jerry Rice. He was really good, but he wasn't nearly what he would become the next year. And then 86, Joe missed half the year with a back injury. I think Matt Barr was the quarterback, if I'm not mistaken, that was that played most of that year. And Jerry was still, that was like his I guess you would say coming out party was with him, not Joe. So those first 2 years they didn't really hit their stride necessarily together. And then they played together 87. Amazing year. Jerry catches 22 touchdowns in 12 games because of the strike. And then 88, 89, Super Bowl. And then 90, they had a great year and just came so close to getting back to that three-peat. Now, Joe, I don't think Joe would have been able to play in that Super Bowl if they had, even if they had hung on to win. But, man, they were close. Anyway, we'll probably revisit this discussion someday, hopefully with someone who wants to discuss it with me, because that's what I love. I love talking about sports. And I love more than anything talking about sports, I guess you would say, of like back in the day. I mean, I don't really. We'll talk a little bit what's recent and going on now, but I think it was so much better. The game was a lot more pure and better. I mean, just all sports, I think, were better back way back when. So, well, that's what I look forward to for anyone willing to join me. This was a lot of fun, and See you next time.